I've got two great guests in studio with me for today's conversations as we talk with the Mason County Sheriff's Office weekly at this time. And I've got Mason County Sheriff Casey Salisbury and Trevor Severance as well from the Sheriff's Office. Good morning, guys.
Morning.
Thanks for coming in the air with me today and talking about some issues. It was a hot one yesterday, and there was a lot of calls that went out. But Trevor, you're here. We're talking search and rescue and some of the things that Casey and I have been talking about over the last couple of weeks in regards to billing and funding and things like that. So what do we want to talk about this morning?
Well, it recently came up in a couple community meetings about the Sheriff's Office receiving reimbursement for certain activities. And some of the information that was alleged or discussed wasn't accurate. Okay. So recently we wrote a piece that went out through our website to dispel some of those rumors and to clarify what we can and cannot get reimbursed for when it comes to Sheriff's Office activities.
Okay. Let's start with some of the main ones we've talked about, times where either out county organizations will come in, kind of like some of the incidents that happened at North Mason High School over the last month, where some over 100 enforcement agencies, I think, came to assess that situation. And so how does that all work at the end of the day?
Well, for most operations within the Sheriff's Office, even major incidents, there is no mechanism for funding. It comes out of our own budget.
Okay.
North Mason High School, the Hawkins Middle School incident, that fell under local established mutual aid contracts between agency, the Sheriff's Office, and other law enforcement agencies across the state to come help. There is a mechanism for statewide law enforcement mobilization, but that is for major emergencies and disasters, and Hawkins Middle School didn't reach that level for that response. We still had to invoke the Mutual Aid Act for law enforcement. Under that, where reimbursement would be capable, we have to exhaust all of our own local resources and our mutual aid resources before we start pulling from other parts of the state. And at that point, the operation gets turned over to the State Patrol.
So when you use all your resources, does that include everybody who is an employee from the Sheriff's Office comes to that incident? And is that how they determine that you are at your capacity? Or
yes.
Oh, okay.
Once we exhaust everything that we possibly have, in fact, that day we still had a couple people out working the road.
Okay.
We did bring them in on overtime, but we still had enough people to cover our operation at Hawkins Middle School and maintain law and order elsewhere in the county for other emergencies that popped up. In fact, I was one of the guys that came in to do that.
And that's one of the challenges that people don't understand, Jeff, is you have to use, virtually everything. When I say we've used everything that day, in general, I'm speaking of that shift. So like this weekend, when our shift got tied up on several major incidences again, we call in the next shift that's going to come in, in a couple hours. We call all those people out. Well, you still have, you still have some people around that are off that day and things, but he's talking about when you use every single thing you have available.
Yeah, all hands on deck.
Other than that, we still have to pay the overtime for that last shift. And that's what we were discussing last week, is a cost in overtime because of the concerns of the sheriff's overtime budget. We had now, 35 or 36 major incidences now adding up this weekend onto that. We can't anticipate those.
Right.
And we have to pay out the overtime. If you pay out the overtime and you're told you have to let people off for it, well, I don't know where to go because we only have so much that we've been given. And that's when the persons came in and commented, well, you can get all this other money, and it's not, they're inaccurate on that.
I guess one of the questions I have was, let's go back to this Hawkins incident, since it was kind of the most prolific over the last month or so. Do you put a call out for assistance needed, or if there are enforcement agencies within earshot, they will come regardless?
Both. Oftentimes, like on that particular incident, we even had agencies that were training at the State Patrol Academy, and some of them were going between there and their home counties, and they picked that up on the radio and knew right where it was at and went right to it. Sometimes they're right there. And then if we need specific resources, we start putting it out to our neighboring counties first. And that day there happened to be 2 different units of people on training that heard that come out and were relatively close, and they started coming that way. Then it went out to Paulsville PD and all those other ones, and within our county understand that many of us broadcast on the same frequencies, or we scan. So when we put that out on the main frequency, you're going to hear Department of Wildlife, DNR, those agencies also pick that up, State Patrol, and they hear it and they start moving that way.
Is it common practice for agencies to ask for reimbursement from other agencies?
No.
No.
Is this kind of,
No.
we help you out this time, knowing that next time you're the ones who could be helping
And
us
that's
out?
what I tried to explain last time. And these folks that had that big concern about that just don't seem to understand that that's a mutual aid issue. And like I said, the first couple of years I was here, we had a number of officer-involved shootings in which we used out-of-county resources. To be honest, if we started billing back and forth, Mason County probably couldn't afford to cover those costs because the larger agencies have come and helped us as much or a lot more than we've helped them.
And these are just local law enforcement agencies. I believe last week we read a story of a rescue on the mountain where the Navy brought in their helicopter. I mean, what's it like
Trevor
for
can
that
explain
time? Talk to us
Well,
about that.
again, that actually falls under a mutual aid agreement as well with the Air Force Rescue Coordination Center that coordinates all federal air assets for use inside the contiguous United States. In fact, this weekend we used the helicopter again yesterday for another rescue on Mount Eleanor. Search and rescue falls a little bit differently, and even then, only if it occurs on federal forest lands in the Olympic National Forest, we can and do collect reimbursement for any pay issues or equipment that gets damaged, lost, broken that we can replace.
Right.
There is a mechanism under federal law, Title III Secure Rural Schools Act, that allows us to recoup those costs for operations, law enforcement, and search and rescue on federal forest lands. So I hate to say it, but it's fortunate when it happens on Mount Eleanor or in the forest where the sheriff's office can recoup some of those costs.
Okay.
Statewide, the only reimbursement there would be for search and rescue volunteers. There's a volunteer program that, as we get a state mission number, as we call it, we call DEM, they call the state emergency management, and they get a mission number. Anybody who responds as a volunteer under that mission number is covered with basic insurance to and from the call. If something happens to them, they're covered medically and stuff like that. Plus, they can get equipment reimbursed and some fuel costs reimbursed depending on the mission. But that doesn't translate to the sheriff's office. That's only search and rescue, registered search and rescue volunteers. So, as a case in point, let's say if you were to take the incident we had recently up in the Olympic National Forest, where we're looking for a missing hiker.
Yeah.
And we're still working on that case. That was almost $10,000 that the sheriff's office paid out up front to make for our portion of this, not including any volunteers. That will be able to be recouped for the most part through the federal forest money. And that money's already been applied for. If you were to take that same incident and put it on Dayton Peak and Green Diamond property, that would be the cost would be completely borne on the sheriff's office. There is no way to recoup that money.
Interesting. Well, it's going to be a continued conversation, I believe, here as we move forward, and especially as budget time approaches here in the county. Anything else you guys want to pass along regarding over the weekend or looking ahead to this week?
You know, I asked Trevor about the rest of the weekend because he worked most of that. We did have another shooting this weekend, which, again, we call out our assets that are on. Then we have to call out everybody, and we go into that overtime mode again. There's just no way. You have to pay people when you call them out to cover that. And then we also had lost hikers again. And every year we know it's going to be an issue for us, but oftentimes people go up into the high country and they're just simply not prepared. They either don't know where they're going or what they're doing. They don't bring the proper equipment, and we end up with what happened again, missing or lost people, I should say. And it's extreme drain on our resources. But I just ask people when they're either going out boating that they carry all the right safety equipment and that kind of thing, and up in the high country as well. And Trevor gets to coordinate all that. So there's something you want to add to that?
Well, and just as a point, yesterday the shooting and the rescue mission up on Mount Eleanor happened at the exact same time.
Oh, wow.
In fact, I responded from the upper trailhead of Mount Eleanor to Allen to cover both incidents as the shift supervisor. So if you look at that, one big incident puts a drain on our resources. But you take two major incidents and they occur at the exact same time, we run out of people and resources really fast.
Yeah.
So we have to call people in, we have to get help. Yesterday we had lots of assistance on the shooting from State Patrol, from Fish and Wildlife, State DOT. Yesterday's rescue mission, we had volunteers, we had fire departments. The Navy again was gracious enough to fly out and pick somebody off the mountain for us. So it's a giant group effort on this side of the state to make these things happen. And it's not just one of us, and it's not, we can't go and just bill anybody and say, hey, you owe us money because we responded.
Right.
And as it was apparently implied that we should do this back and forth exchange of money and bill these agencies. Think about yesterday what that would have cost the county here to pay the State Patrol and these others to come in. It's mutual aid. Some years we get more help than what we give, and other years we give more help than what we get, and that's that's why they call it mutual aid, not billing each other for services.
Right. Mason County Sheriff Casey Salisbury, Trevor Severance, thanks for coming on the air today talking about this.
Thank you.